Good afternoon or good evening, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, and welcome to the Week 13 edition of the Week That Was, as we'll be taking a look at all the team and player statistical numbers from Week 13 in the NFL, and all 32 teams did play this past week. Also coming up are my Week 14 power rankings and a look at the updated NFL playoff picture. That's towards the end, so make sure you stay tuned. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. And here we go with the Week 13 edition of the Week That Was. And we will start on Thanksgiving, where we had 3 games. We also had a Black Friday game, which we'll get into in just a second. All right, but starting things off, the Green Bay Packers completed the season sweep of the Detroit Lions, winning at Ford Field 31-24. The Packers, with the win, improved to 8-3-1, while the Lions kind of free falling here. They're now 7-5 and presently on the outside of the playoffs. Looking in, more on that later. All right, we'll start with individual numbers, beginning with the Packers. Jordan Love was 18 of 30 for 234 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He had a 124.2 QB rating. He also ran 5 times for 4 yards. Josh Jacobs was the leading rusher for Green Bay with 17 carries, 83 yards, and a 4.9 average. As for your top receivers, you have Dontavian Wicks with 6 catches, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets and a 15.7 average. Christian Watson, 4 for 80 and a touchdown on 10 targets. He averaged 20 per catch. Luke Musgrave, just 1 catch on 1 target for 23. And Romeo Doubs, 4 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. He averaged 5 per catch. Brandon McManus was 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 45, and 4 for 4 on extra points. Daniel Whelan, 2 punts, averaging 67, which is very impressive. His long punt was 72 yards with 1 touchback. All right, as for your leading tacklers for the Packers, Isaiah McDuffie led the way with 12. Evan Williams ended up with 9 tackles. Micah Parsons with 8 tackles and 2.5 sacks. Edgerrin Cooper also had 8 tackles. And Keyshawn Nixon had 7 solo tackles. For the Lions, Jared Goff was 20 of 26 for 256 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. He had a 132.9 QB rating. David Montgomery also attempted a pass in this game. He had a 39.6 QB rating. As for your rushers, Jahmyr Gibbs had 20 carries, 68 yards, held to just a 3.4 average. David Montgomery had 8 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged only 4 per run. Leading receivers include Jamison Williams, 7 catches for 144 and a touchdown on 10 targets. He averaged 20.6. Then you have Tom Kennedy with 4 catches, 36 yards on 4 targets. He had a 9 average. Isaiah Tesla had 2 catches, 35 yards and a touchdown on 2 targets at 17.5 per catch. Jahmyr Gibbs, 3 for 18 on 4 targets. He averaged 6. And David Montgomery, 2 for 16 on 2 targets. He averaged 8. Jake Bates, 1 for 1 on field goals, long from 31. 3 for 3 on extra points. Jack Fox punted twice, averaging 42.5, long of 46, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Lions include Brian Branch with 10 tackles and 2 passes defensed. Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone each had 9 tackles. and Aiden Hutchinson had 6 tackles. Meanwhile, Amik Robertson had 4 tackles and 3 passes defensed. Total yards nearly split, 359 for the Packers, 352 for the Lions. Passing yards slightly favored the Packers, 234 to 233. Rush yards also favored Green Bay, 125 to 119. The Lions had more first downs. They had 20 versus 18 for the Packers. Both teams did pretty well on late downs. 6 of 12 on third down for Green Bay and 3 for 3 on fourth down. Detroit was 8 for 13 on third down and 0 for 2 on fourth down. The Packers had 3 penalties for 20 yards with no sacks taken, no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. The Lions had 5 penalties for 22 yards with 3 sacks taken for 23 yards, and also no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. Detroit won the time of possession battle at 31 minutes 6 seconds, while the Packers had the ball for 28 minutes and 54 seconds. Closing line was Detroit -3 and the over-under was 48. I picked Detroit to win and to cover, and I lost both picks. But I did get the over-under correct. I projected this game would go over 48 points. The two teams scored 55. So I start the week off 0-1 straight up and against the spread, and 1-0 on over-unders. And as you'll see going along these picks, it was a bad start to the week. All right. The next game on Thanksgiving saw the Dallas Cowboys keep their playoff hopes alive, beating the Kansas City Chiefs 31-28 and furthering damaging Kansas City's postseason aspirations. Dallas is now over 500 with the win. They were 6-5-1 after 3 straight. The Chiefs, meanwhile, dropped to 6-6, and they're pretty much in no man's land as far as the playoffs are concerned after this one. We'll start with individual numbers first for the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott was 27-39, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 early interception. He had a 100.4 QB rating. Leading rushers include Javonte Williams, 17 carries, 59 yards, and a 3.5 average. Here you have Malik Davis, second-year player out of Florida. He had 3 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 15.7. And Kevontae Turpin, 3 carries, 33 yards. He averaged 11. Leading receivers for Dallas include CeeDee Lamb, 7 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. He averaged 16 per catch. George Pickens, 6 for 88 on 13 targets, 14.7 average. Jake Ferguson, 5 for 36 on 6 targets, and a 7.2 average. Ryan Flournoy, 3 catches, 34 yards on 3 targets at 11.3 per grab. Kevontae Turpin, 2 catches, 28 yards on 2 targets. He averaged 14. And Javonte Williams, 3 catches, 21 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 3 targets. He averaged 7 per catch. Brandon Aubrey, 3 for 3 on field goals, long of 49, 2 for 2 on extra points. Ryan Anger with just 1 punt for 62 yards. That was pretty impressive. Leading tacklers for the Cowboys include Jadeveon Clowney with 6 tackles and 2 sacks. Siobhan Revel Jr., rookie from East Carolina, he had 6 tackles, as well as DeMarvion Overshown. He also had 6 tackles. Donovan Wilson had 5 tackles and a forced fumble. Logan Wilson had 4 tackles. Deron Bland had 3 solo tackles. Quinnen Williams had 4 tackles. Sam Williams, no relation, also had 4 tackles. And Reddy Stewart had 3 or 4 tackles as well, plus a pass defense. For the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes finished 23 of 34 for 261, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a 129.7 QB rating. Leading rusher was Kareem Hunt, 14 carries, 58 yards, and a 4.1 average. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes added 3 carries for 30 yards. He averaged 10. Isaiah Pacheco, 3 for 16, averaging 5.3. And Xavier Worthy, 2 for 13, averaging 6.5. Leading receivers for KC include Rashee Rice, 8 catches, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 12 targets. He averaged 11.5 per catch. Xavier Worthy, 4 for 61 on 6 targets and a 15.3 average. Travis Kelce, 5 for 45 and a touchdown on 6 targets. He averaged 9. Kareem Hunt, 1 catch, 2 targets for 22 yards. Hollywood Brown, 2 for 20 and a touchdown on 2 targets. That's 10 per catch. And Isaiah Pacheco, 2 for 17 on 2 targets and an 8.5 average. No field goals for Harrison Butker, but he was 4 for 4 on extra points. Matt Araiza with 5 punts, averaging 43, long punt of 59, 1 touchback, and 4 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Chiefs include Nick Bolton, who led the team with 11, plus 2 passes defensed. Chamari Connor had 9 tackles. Trent McDuffie, he had pretty much a rough game in coverage. He had 7 tackles and a forced fumble. Jalen Watson had 6 solo tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Jaden Hicks with 5 tackles and 2 passes defense. Drew Tranquil, 5 tackles. And Mike Edwards finished with 4 tackles and a pass defense. Total yards, 457 for the Cowboys, 362 for the Chiefs. Passing yards favored Dallas, 320 to 243. And rush yards also favored Dallas, 137 to 119. 23 first downs for the Cowboys, 19 for the Chiefs. Kansas City was 5 of 13 on 3rd down and 3 for 3 on 4th down. And Dallas was 9 of 16 on 3rd down and 1 for 1 on 4th down. So on late downs, both teams did pretty good. 10 penalties, 119 yards for the Chiefs, 3 sacks taken for 18 with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 7 penalties, 50 yards for the Cowboys, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, and that early interception thrown by Dak Prescott. Time of possession, 30 minutes, 54 seconds for the Cowboys, and 29 minutes, 6 seconds for the Chiefs. Closing line was Kansas City -3. The over-under was 53. I picked the Chiefs to win and cover, lost both picks, and I also lost the over-under as I projected that this game would go under 52, but there would still be points. They combined for 59 points, which would tie for the highest scoring game across the league in Week 13. So with that, my straight-up record drops to 0-2, as does my ATS record. And I'm now 1-1 on over-under totals. As we come to the finale of the Turkey Day triple header, as the Cincinnati Bengals get Joe Burrow back and cruised to a 32-14 victory over Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Cincinnati moves its record to 4-8, while the Baltimore Ravens had their 5-game winning streak snapped. They dropped back to 6-6. We'll begin with individual numbers first for the Bengals, and Joe Burrow, who has not played in 11 weeks with that toe injury, came back and looked pretty good. 24-46, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and an 83.7 QB rating. As for your leading rushers, you have Chase Brown with 15 carries, 78 yards, and a 5.2 average. And Samaje Perine, 14 carries, 39 yards, and an average of 2.8. Leading receivers for the Bengals include Jamar Chase, 7 catches for 110 on 14 targets. He had a 15.7 average. Chase Brown added 7 catches for 35 yards on 7 targets and a 5 average. Andre Yosivas, 1 catch for 29 and a touchdown on 2 targets. Then you have Mitch Tinsley from Penn. He played at Penn State collegiately. 2 catches, 22 yards, 9 targets, and an 11 average. Mike Gesicki, 2 catches, 19 yards on 4 targets, averaging 9.5. And Samaje Perine, 2 for 15 on 2 targets, averaging 7.5. Tanner Hudson had a touchdown catch in this game for 14 yards on 2 targets. Evan McPherson, 6 for 6 on field goals, long of 52, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Ryan Rakow, 2 punts averaging 52.5, long punt 54, 1 touchback, and the other inside the 20-yard line. All right, as for leading tacklers for the Bengals, you've got Jordan Battle with 10 tackles and a forced fumble, 6 tackles and 2 passes defensed for Dax Hill. Barrett Carter had 5 tackles. Demetrius Knight Jr. also had 5 tackles plus a pass defense and an interception. BJ Hill had 5 tackles as well. Geno Stone 4 solo tackles. And Joseph Asai, he had a pretty big game. 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson still not quite himself yet. 17 of 32 for 246 with no touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 65.4 QB rating. Plus 6 carries for 27 yards at a 4.5 clip. Derrick Henry, 10 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown. That's an average of 6. Keaton Mitchell, 2 for 19, and a touchdown. He averaged 9.5. Leading receivers for Baltimore include Isaiah Likely, who led the way with 5 catches and 95 yards on 6 targets, averaging 19 per catch. Mark Andrews, 4 for 47 on 6 targets and an average of 11.8. Derrick Henry, 1 catch, but it was a big one for 44 yards on his only target. And DeAndre Hopkins, 2 catches, 25 yards on 3 targets, averaging 12.5. Tyler Luke with no field goals attempted, but he went 2 for 2 on extra points. And Jordan Stout, had 3 punts, averaging 49.7, long punt of 61 with 1 touchback. All right. Leading tacklers for the Ravens include Marlon Humphrey. He had 9 tackles and a sack. Aloy Gilman had 8 tackles and a pass defense. Teddy Buchanan had 7 tackles. Chidobe Awuzie had 5 solo tackles and 2 passes defensed. Kyle Hamilton finished with 7 tackles and 1 pass defensed. And Roquan Smith led the team with 11 tackles. Total yards were 382 for the Bengals and 346 for the Ravens. Passing yards favored Cincinnati 254 to 223. Rush yards also favored Cincinnati slightly there, 128 to 123. The Bengals had 22 first downs versus 16 for the Ravens. Cincinnati was 8 of 19 on third down. Baltimore was 3 for 10 on third down, and both teams went 1 for 2 on fourth down. 6 penalties, 35 yards for the Bengals, 1 sack taken for 7, with 1 fumble lost and no interceptions thrown. 7 penalties, 53 yards for the Ravens, 3 sacks taken for 23, 4 lost fumbles, and 1 interception thrown. So the Ravens had a tough time controlling the football. The Bengals are in ball hawk territory as they possessed the ball for 38 minutes and 46 seconds versus only 21 minutes and 14 seconds for the Ravens. A ball hawk, if you're new to the channel, is a team that possesses the ball for at least 35 minutes, whether a team wins or loses. Closing line was Baltimore minus 6.5, and the over-under was 51.5. I took the Ravens straight up, but I took the Bengals with the points. So I'm still winless in my straight up picks at 0-3. Rough start to the week. 1-2 ATS, and I projected the game goes under 51.5. There were 46 points scored. So I won that pick. So over-under totals are now 2-1. But yeah, that 0-3 start straight up really sticks out like a sore thumb. And it gets no better, as on Black Friday, the Philadelphia Eagles lose at home to the Chicago Bears by a final of 24-15. The Bears moved their record to 9-3 and could take over number 1 in the NFC with a Rams loss on Sunday. More on that in a little bit. The Eagles, meanwhile, dropped back-to-back games to fall to 8-4 on the season, but they're still in front in the NFC East. We'll begin with individual numbers, beginning with the victorious Bears. Caleb Williams really didn't throw the ball all that good. 17 of 36 for 154 with a touchdown and an interception. He had a 56.9 QB rating. The story in this game was the ground attack for the Chicago Bears, led by Kyle Monangai. 22 carries for 130 and a touchdown. He averaged 5.9. And former Eagle DeAndre Swift, 18 carries, 125 and a touchdown. He averaged 6.9 per run. Leading receivers for Chicago include Cole Kmet, just 3 catches for 36 yards, plus a touchdown on 3 targets. He averaged 12 per catch. Luther Burden III, 4 catches, 33 yards on 6 targets, and an 8.3 average for the rookie. Colston Loveland, another rookie, had 3 catches, 28 yards on 6 targets, averaging 9.3. Olamide Zaccheaus, 2 catches, 19 yards on 3 targets, averaging 9.5. And DJ Moore, 2 catches, 17 yards on 5 targets, averaging 8.5. Cairo Santos, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 30, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Torrey Taylor, 3 punts, averaging 42.3, long punt of 51 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Bears include Jaquan Brisker. He had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Kevin Byard, another former Eagle playing against his former team, had 6 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Nashawn Wright, 5 tackles and a forced fumble. All right, DeMarco Jackson had 5 tackles. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson, another former Eagle, he had 3 tackles against his former mates. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts pretty rough game. 19 of 34, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, and an 84.2 QB rating. And this is just the second INT thrown by Hurts this season. On the rushing side, Saquon Barkley held to 13 carries, 56 yards, averaging 4.3. And Jalen Hurts added 4 rushes for 31 and a 7.8 average. Leading receivers, not much to talk about here. A.J. Brown, 10 for 132 and 2 touchdowns on 12 targets, 13.2 average. Devontae Smith, 5 for 48 on 8 targets and a 9.6 average. And Dallas Goedert, 2 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets, averaging 13.5. Jake Elliott, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 44, 0 for 1 on extra points. Braden Mann, 5 punts, averaging 49, long punt of 63, 1 touchback and 1 inside the 20. All right, leading tacklers for the Eagles include Reed Blankenship with 14 tackles, Nakobe Dean with 12 tackles and a pass defense, Jordan Davis, 9 tackles, Adoree Jackson, 5 tackles, Zach Bond, 8 tackles, Sheldon Brown, 6 tackles, Jalen Carter, 4 tackles and a sack plus 2 passes defense, and Moro Ojomo, 4 tackles, Cooper DeJean, 5 tackles and a pass defense, Jalen Phillips, 4 tackles and a pass defense, and Quinyon Mitchell, 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. Total yards were 425 for the Bears, 317 for the Eagles. Passing yards favored Philadelphia, 230 to 144. However, rush yards, big advantage to the Chicago Bears, 281 to 87. The Bears had 28 first downs. The Eagles half that, just 14 first downs. Chicago finished 10 of 17 on third down, 1 for 3 on fourth down. Philly was 4 for 12 on third down with no fourth downs. 4 penalties, 35 yards for the Bears, 2 sacks taken for 10, no lost fumbles, and 1 interception thrown. 7 penalties, 44 yards for the Eagles, and that's after having 14 penalties against the Cowboys just 4 days earlier. They took no sacks, they had 1 lost fumble, and 1 interception thrown. The Bears well into ball hawk territory as they possessed the ball for 39 minutes and 18 seconds. As for the Eagles, just 20 minutes and 42 seconds. Closing line was Philadelphia -7 and the over-under was 43. I picked the Eagles, of course, to win and to cover. So now my straight-up record is an abysmal 0-4. ATS record is 1-3. I projected this game to go over 44 points. And they scored a combined 39, so I'll lose this pick. So that's a 2-2 record on over-under totals. So there was a very tough start to the week with my picks, as I went 0-4 straight up on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. And this will bring us to Sunday finally, starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers holding off the Arizona Cardinals 20-17. Tampa Bay snapped a 3-game losing streak to move its record to 6-5, or rather 7-5. And the Cardinals are now officially knocked out of playoff contention with a record of 3-9. We'll start with individual numbers first for the Buccaneers, starting with Baker Mayfield. 18 of 28 for 194 with a touchdown and no interceptions and a 96.4 QB rating. Bucky Irving made his long-awaited return to the team after being out with injuries. He had 17 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown at a 3.6 average. Baker Mayfield, meanwhile, added 6 carries for 27 yards and a 4.5 average. Okay, leading receivers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers include Chris Godwin, 3 catches, 78 yards on 5 targets. That's a 26 average. Emeka Egbuka, 4 catches, 42 yards on 8 targets. That's a 10.5 average. Rachaad White, 3 for 22 on 3 targets. He averaged 7.3. Bucky Irving added another 2 catches for 20 yards on 2 targets. That's an average of 10. And how about Tristan Wirfs? He plays on the offensive line for the Buccaneers. 1 catch, 1 target for 2 yards, and that 1 catch turned into a touchdown. Chase McLaughlin, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 57, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Riley Dixon, 5 punts, averaging 48, long punt of 59, with 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Buccaneers include Servaka Dennis, leading the team with 11 tackles. Jacob Parrish had 7 tackles. Antoine Winfield Jr., 7 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Levante David with 6 tackles. Zion McCullen with 5 tackles. And then you got Logan Hall with 4 tackles and a forced fumble. And 4 tackles apiece for Greg Gaines and Anthony Nelson. Vita Vea, by the way, had just 2 tackles, but he also had a sack in this game. For the Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett was 29 of 40 for 301 with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 100.1 QB rating. Your leading rusher was Bam Knight, 11 carries, 62 yards, averaging 5.6. Leading receivers for Arizona include Trey McBride, 8 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. He averaged 10.3 per catch. Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 catches, 69 yards on 7 targets, and an 11.5 average. Michael Carter, 5 catches, 47 yards on 6 targets, and a 9.4 average. And Bam Knight, 3 catches, 36 yards on 3 targets, plus a touchdown. And Michael Wilson also with 3 catches and 36 yards on 7 targets. Both averaged 12 yards per catch. Chad Ryland was 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 52, and 2 for 2 on extra points. And Matt Hawk, pretty much a homecoming for him, played his collegiate ball right down the street at Arizona State. He had 2 punts in his Cardinal debut, averaging 46, long punt of 48. All right, leading tacklers for Big Red include Akeem Davis Gaither with 10 tackles, Cody Simon with 9 tackles, Budda Baker also with 9 tackles plus a pass defense, Katan Crawford, he's a rookie from he's a rookie from Nevada. He had 5 tackles. Will Johnson, another rookie out of the University of Michigan, he had 4 tackles. Josh Sweat, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Garrett Williams had 4 tackles. And Baron Browning also had 4 tackles. Total yards, 386 for the Cardinals, 279 for the Bucs. Passing yards favored Arizona, 291 to 184. Both teams ran for 95 yards. 22 first downs for the Cardinals, only 13 for the Buccaneers. Arizona was 3 for 8 on 3rd down, 0 for 2 on 4th down. Tampa Bay was 7 for 16 on 3rd down and 1 for 1 on 4th down. 4 penalties, 33 yards for the Cardinals, 2 sacks taken for 10 yards, with 1 lost fumble and 1 interception thrown. 5 penalties, 40 yards for the Bucks. Also 2 sacks taken for 10 yards. They had no fumbles or interceptions thrown. Time of possession nearly split down the middle. 30 minutes, 26 seconds for the Buccaneers. 29 minutes, 34 seconds for the Cardinals. Closing line was Tampa Bay -4. The over-under is 45.5. I picked the Bucks to win and to cover, and this was all based on whether or not Baker Mayfield played in this game, which he did. And I also took Tampa Bay at -2.5, so this will count as a dub. So this is my first straight up win of week 13 at 1-4, 2-3 ATS, and now 2-3 on over unders. As I projected this game would go over 43 points. There were 37 scored. So over under totals are also 2 and 3. All right, our next game up was a pretty entertaining game between the Atlanta Falcons and the New York Jets. The home team ends up winning this one 27-24 as they got a late field goal in the closing seconds. New York improves to 3-9 on the season, while Atlanta drops to 4-8. We'll start with individual numbers first for the Jets. Let me get up in here real quick. There we go. All right, Tyrod Taylor, 19-33 for 172 yards with 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and an 81.9 QB rating. Leading rushers include Breece Hall, 19 for 68, and a touchdown on an average of 3.6. And Tyrod Taylor, 8 carries, 44 yards, and a rushing touchdown of his own. He averaged 5.5. Leading receivers for the Jets include Adonai Mitchell, 8 catches for 102 and a touchdown on 12 targets, averaging 12.8 per catch. You can argue that this was his best game of his career as either a Jet or a Colt. Mason Taylor had 2 catches for 21 yards on 4 targets, averaging 10.5. John Mechie, 4 for 19 yards on 8 targets and a 4.8 average. And Jeremy Ruckert, 2 catches, 12 yards on 2 targets, averaging 6. Nick Folk, of course, the Folk hero in New York in this one, 2 for 3 on field goals. His long was 56, which actually was the game winner. And 3 for 3 on extra points. Austin McNamara with 6 punts, averaging 49.3. Long punt of 55 with 3 inside the 20-yard line. So he had a pretty good day himself. Leading tacklers for the Jets include Malachi Moore with 10 tackles, Isaiah Oliver with 9 tackles and a pass defense, Quincy Williams, 8 tackles and 2 passes defense, Tony Adams, 5 tackles and a sack. Jermaine Johnson also with 5 tackles. Will McDonald the 4th with 4 tackles. And you also have 5 tackles for Marcelino McCrary-Ball. If you never heard of him, he played collegiately at Indiana. He's in his 2nd year in the NFL. And Azariah Thomas, rookie from Florida State, he also had 5 tackles plus a pass defense. For the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, 21-33, 244 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 94.8 QB rating. Bijan Robinson led the charge, 23 carries, 142, and a touchdown, averaging 6.2 per run. So he had a pretty good day. He also has some solid receiving numbers. More on that in a sec. Tyler Algier, 8 carries, 20 yards. He also had a rushing touchdown, only averaging 2.5 per run. Okay, leading receivers for the Falcons include Kyle Pitts, 7 for 82 on 8 targets. That's an 11.7 average. The aforementioned Bijan Robinson with 5 catches, 51 yards on 7 targets, and a 10.2 average. So that's nearly a 200-yard day for Bijan. Tyler Algier added 2 grabs for 35 on 2 targets, 17.5 average. Darnell Mooney, 2 for 25 on 5 targets, 12.5 average. Devin Tompkins, 2 catches, 23 yards on 2 targets, 11.5 average. And David Sills the fifth, third-year man out of West Virginia, had 2 catches, 15 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. That's a 7.5 average. Zane Gonzalez, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 52, 3 for 3 on extra points. Bradley Pinion, 6 punts, averaging 38.8, not an impressive average. Long punt was 55, but he did have 5 of his 6 punts inside the 20-yard line, so that's pretty good. Offset that average. Leading tacklers for the Falcons include Divine Diablo with 8 tackles leading the way, along with Caden Ellis, who also had 8 tackles. Mike Hughes, 6 solo tackles. D. Alford, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Jesse Bates, 4 tackles. James Pierce Jr. with 2 solo tackles plus a sack. David Onyemata, 4 tackles. And A.J. Terrell with 3 tackles and a pass defense. Meanwhile, Leonard Floyd had 2 tackles plus a sack. Total yards, 389 for the Falcons, 269 for the Jets. Passing yards favored Atlanta, 222 to 159. Rush yards also favored Atlanta, 167 to 110. 25 first downs for the Falcons, 16 for the Jets. Atlanta 4 of 12 on third down with no fourth downs, and 7 of 16 for the Jets, and 1 for 1 on fourth down. 1 penalty for 27 yards for the Atlanta Falcons. 2 sacks taken for 12 yards. 1 lost fumble and no interceptions thrown. 9 penalties, 59 yards for the Jets. 2 sacks taken for 13. No lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. Time of possession is won by the Falcons at 32 minutes 55 seconds. The Jets, meanwhile, had the ball for 27 minutes and 5 seconds. Closing line was Atlanta -3, and the over-under was 38.5. I did take the Falcons to win and to cover at 2.5, but I lost both picks, so now my straight-up record drops to 1-5. ATS record is 2-4. Over-under totals is also 2-4, as I took the under in this game at 39.5, and the 2 teams combined for 51 points. Sorry about that. All right, our next 2 games both come from the AFC South. We'll begin with the Houston Texans and their number 1 rated defense shutting down Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium 20-16. Houston has not only roared their way back into the AFC playoff picture, but also in the AFC South title discussion, as they go to 7-5 following their 4th straight win. The Colts, meanwhile, they've dropped back-to-back games and fall to 8-4. In fact, I think they've lost 3 in a row. But either way, Indy is 8-3. Individual numbers starting off with the Texans. C.J. Stroud made his return at quarterback. He went 22 of 35 for 276 with no touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 75.4 QB rating, and he ran once for no gain. Leading rushers for the Texans include Woody Marks, 19 carries, 64 yards, and a 3.4 average. Nick Chubb, 9 for 34 and a touchdown. He averaged 3.8. Nico Collins even had a rushing touchdown in this game, his lone rush of the game for 7 yards. Very impressive. Okay, the aforementioned Nico Collins led the Texans receivers with 5 catches, 98 yards on 10 targets, averaging 19.6. Jaden Higgins had 5 catches, 65 yards on 5 targets, averaging 13 per catch. Dalton Schultz, 7 for 55 on 8 targets. That's a 7.9 average. Xavier Hutchinson, 2 for 39 on 5 targets, averaging 19.5. And Cade Stover, 2 catches, 16 yards on 2 targets. He averaged 8 per grab. Kaimi Fairbairn, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 43, 2 for 2 on extra points. Tommy Townsend punted twice for an average of 48. His long punt was 52 yards. Leading tacklers for the Houston Texans include Azeez Al-Shaair with 8 tackles, pacing the team. Kalen Bullock had 7 tackles and a pass defense. 5 tackles apiece for Miles Bryant and Henry Duo. Will Anderson Jr., 4 tackles. EJ Speed also had 4 tackles. He's a former Colt, playing his former team for the first time. Sheldon Rankins, 2 solo tackles and a sack. And Tommy Togiel, he had 4 tackles. On the Indianapolis side of things, Daniel Jones reportedly has been playing with a broken fibula and decided to play through it. It pretty much showed in this game. He went 14 of 27 for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, but no interceptions, which is good. He had a 101 QB rating. Jonathan Taylor was 21 carries, 85 yards. He averaged 4 per run. Leading receivers include Alec Pierce, 4 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets, 19.5 average. Josh Downs, 2 for 44 on 6 targets, 22 average. Jonathan Taylor added 3 grabs for 36 on 5 targets. He averaged 12 per catch. And the rookie Tyler Warren had 3 catches, 22 yards, and a TD on 4 targets, averaging 7.3. Michael Badgley was 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 42, and 1 for 2 on extra points. Rigoberto Sanchez with 4 punts, averaging 47.3, long punt of 55, with 1 touchback and 1 inside the 20-yard line. All right, your leading receivers for the Colts include Zaire Franklin with 13 tackles. Nice number there. Jermaine Pratt, 9 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Nick Cross had 6 tackles. Cam Bynum had 6 tackles as well, plus a pass defense and an interception. Charvarius Ward had 5 tackles. Mekhi Blackman, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Kwity Paye had 6 tackles. Kenny Moore had 5 tackles. Grover Stewart had 3 tackles and a pass defense. And Chris Wormley, you don't hear his name a lot. He's an 8-year veteran from the University of Michigan. He had 2 solo tackles and a sack. All right, total yards, 364 for the Texans, 281 for the Colts. Passing yards favored Houston, 256 to 195. Rush yards also favored Houston, 108 to 86. Texans had 24 first downs. The Colts had 17. On third down, Houston was 6 of 13. Indianapolis was 3 for 10. Both teams 0 for 2 on fourth down. 9 penalties, 85 yards for the Texans. 2 sacks taken for 20 with no lost fumbles and 1 interception thrown. 5 penalties, 33 yards for the Colts. 1 sack taken for 6 yards no lost fumbles, and no interceptions thrown. All right. The Houston Texans won time of possession and were 2 seconds away from ball hawk territory. They had the ball for 34 minutes, 58 seconds. Meanwhile, the Colts just 25 minutes and 2 seconds of possession. Closing line was Indianapolis -3. The over-under was 44.5. I took the Colts to win, but I took Houston with the points. So my straight-up record drops to 1-6. My spread record goes to 3-4. Over-under totals also go to 3-4 as I took the under 44 points in this game. Only 36 were scored. So again, the Colts are kind of slumping a little bit, and the Texans are red hot. They are right back in the conversation for the AFC South. And staying in this very division, the Jacksonville Jaguars defeated the Tennessee Titans 25-3 as Tennessee's struggles continue. Jacksonville improves to 8-4, tying the Colts atop the division. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Titans are officially out of the playoffs with a 1-11 record. We'll begin with individual numbers. First up, for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, an okay game for him, 16 of 27, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 111.5 QB rating. He also added 3 rushes for 25 yards, averaging a team-high 8.3. Really, the ground game was pretty underwhelming for Jacksonville as Travis Etienne Jr. was held to 12 carries, 28 yards, and a 2.3 average. Meanwhile, Bashul Tutin, 8 carries, 17 yards, and a touchdown, only a 2.1 average though. Leading receivers for the Jags include Jacoby Myers, 6 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. That's a 15 average. Brenton Strange, back from injury, 3 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets, also a 15 average. Brian Thomas, who's pretty much been invisible in this offense all year, had 2 catches, 28 yards on 3 targets, averaging 14 per reception. Cam Little, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 45, 2 for 2 on extra points. Logan Cook, 7 punts, averaging 44.7, long punt of 63, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Jaguars include Devin Lloyd. He had 8 tackles to lead the team. Monteric Brown had 7 tackles. Foye Oluokun and Denny Strigal, rookie from Minnesota, each had 6 tackles. Josh Hines-Allen, 3 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Jerrion Jones, also with 3 solo tackles. Antonio Johnson, 4 tackles. Andrew Wingard, 3 tackles and 2 passes defensed. And Ventrell Miller had 2 tackles and a forced fumble. As for the Titans, Cam Ward, 24 of 38 for 141 with no touchdowns or interceptions. He has a 70.2 QB rating in this one. Leading rusher was Tony Pollard, although he was limited, 10 carries, 60 yards, and a 6 average. Leading receivers for the Titans include Chig Okonkwo, 4 catches, 29 yards on 5 targets at a 7.3 clip. Tajay Spears, 6 for 25 on 6 targets, averaging 4.2. Gunnar Helms, 6 for 23 yards on 7 targets and a 3.8 average. And Van Jefferson, 3 catches, 20 yards on 4 targets, averaging 6.7. Joey Sly, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 28 with no extra points. Johnny Hecker, 5 punts, averaging 46.4, long punt of 57 with 1 touchback. All right, leading tacklers for the Tennessee Titans include Cedric Gray, who led the team with 9. Rookie Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State had 8 tackles and a sack. Marcus Harris, 4 tackles. Jeffrey Simmons, 6 tackles and a sack. Tavondre Sweat had 3 tackles. Daryl Baker Jr. likewise had 3 tackles, plus a pass defense. And Amani Hooker had 4 tackles. Not a lot of offense by either team. 272 yards for the Jaguars, 188 for the Titans. Passing yards favored Jacksonville, 202 to 121. Rush yards favored Jacksonville as well, 70 to 67, as did first downs. The Jags had 20 while the Titans had 11. Both teams struggled on third down, 3 for 13 for Jacksonville, 3 for 12 for Tennessee. Jaguars 1 for 1 on fourth down, and the Titans were 1 for 4. And there were a lot of penalties in this game, 23 total. 13 for 98 yards for Jacksonville, 3 sacks taken for 27 yards with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown, and 10 penalties for 86 yards for the Titans. 3 sacks taken for 20 with 2 lost fumbles and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession favors Jacksonville at 31 minutes 26 seconds, and for the Titans, 28 minutes and 34 seconds. Closing line was Jacksonville -6, and the over-under was 42. I picked Jacksonville to win, but I did take Tennessee with the points, so that kind of cost me there. Straight-up record is now 2-6, which is not great. Spread record drops to 3-5. But I did even my record in over-under totals for the week, as I projected the game goes under 41.5 points. There were only 28 scored. So on over-under totals, I am now 4-4. If you're just joining me, you're watching the week that was. That's where we're taking a look at the player and team statistical numbers from week 13 in the NFL. Coming up are my week 14 NFL power rankings and a look at the playoff picture going into week 14 at the very end. So please stay tuned. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. And let's get on with the recap. And one of the biggest surprises of week 13, the Carolina Panthers, still hanging around in the NFC playoff race, got a big boost after taking down the Los Angeles Rams, who came in as the #1 team in the conference. Carolina wins this one 31-28 to improve their record to 7-6. As for the Rams, they dropped to 9-3. And I'll tell you again about the playoff picture at the end of this rundown. So again, stay tuned. We'll begin with individual numbers, starting off with the Carolina Panthers. Efficient game for Bryce Young, 15 of 20 for 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a 147.1 QB rating. And they ran the ball very well as well. Chuba Hubbard, 17 carries, 83 yards, 4.9 average. Rico Dowdle, 18 for 58 and a 3.2 average. Bryce Young had some wheels himself. 5 carries, 23 yards, and a 4.6 average. All right, leading receivers for the Panthers include Jalen Coker, 4 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. That's an 18.5 average. Rookie Tetaroa McMillan from the University of Arizona had just 1 catch in the game for a touchdown on 2 targets, and it went for 43. Chuba Hubbard added 2 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. And Rico Dowdle, 2 for 21 on 2 targets. That's a 10.5 average. And a lesser-known name, Mitchell Evans, rookie from Notre Dame, 3 catches for 20 yards on 3 targets, averaging 6.7. Ryan Fitzgerald, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 33, and 4 for 4 on extra points. Sam Martin, 3 punts, averaging 37.3, long punt of 45, with no touchbacks and 2 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Panthers include Lathan Ransom, another rookie from Ohio State, led the team with 11 tackles plus a sack. Nick Scott had 9 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. 6 tackles apiece for Trevin Wallace and Charles Smith-Wade. A'Shawn Robinson, 3 tackles and a pass defense. Derek Brown, 2 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and a pass defense. And further down the list, you've got Mike Jackson, I should say. He had just 1 solo tackle, but he had a pass defense and an interception return for a touchdown. That's the second defensive touchdown scored by the Panthers this season. As for the Rams, Matthew Stafford had a problem with hanging on to the football. He was a turnover machine in this one. 18 of 28 for 243 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He had an 85.9 QB rating. All right. As for rushing, Blake Corum, another former Michigan Wolverine, had 7 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 11.6. And Kyron Williams, 13 carries, 72 yards, and a touchdown. That's a 5.5 average. All right, leading receivers for the Rams include Xavier Smith. 3 catches, 82 yards on 3 targets. That's an average of 27.3. Puka Nacua, 6 for 72 on 9 targets and a 12 average. Devontae Adams, yeah, he's the guy with the Taco Bell in his house. He has 4 catches, 58 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 5 targets, averaging 14.5. And Colby Parkinson, 4 for 27 yards on 5 targets. He averages 6.8. Harrison Mevis, no field goals and 4 for 4 on extra points. So really special teams was pretty optional in this game. Ethan Evans with just 1 punt for 56 yards. All right, your leading tacklers for the Rams include Byron Young, who had 8 tackles and a sack. Nate Landman also had 8 tackles. Omar Spates had 7 tackles. Cam Kitchen, 6 solo tackles. Braden Fisk, 6 tackles and a sack. Garrett Verse, 4 tackles. And Jalen McCullough had 5 tackles. Total yards, 379 for the Rams, 358 for the Panthers. Passing yards favored LA, 227 to 194. Rush yards favored Carolina, 164 to 152. 22 first downs for the Rams and 17 for the Panthers. LA only 2 of 5 on 3rd down with no 4th downs. Carolina was 7 of 15 on 3rd down and 3 for 3 on 4th down. 1 penalty for 5 yards for the Rams. That's it. 2 sacks taken for 16 yards. 1 lost fumble and 2 interceptions thrown. And Matthew Stafford is responsible for all 3 of the turnovers in this game. 7 penalties, 70 yards for the Panthers. 2 sacks taken for 12. No lost fumbles, no interceptions thrown. So they did not have an issue with hanging on to the ball. The Panthers also went into ball hawk territory, possessing the ball for 35 minutes and 16 seconds versus 24 minutes, 44 seconds for the Rams. Closing line was LA minus 10 and the over-under was 45. I did pick the Rams to win, but thank God I took Carolina with the 10.5 points. So my straight up record, maybe the worst it's been all year long at 2-7 through 9 games. Almost even with my ATS picks at 4-5, as again I took the Panthers with the points. And my over-under total goes to 5-4, as I projected this game would go over 44.5 points. We had 59 in this game, and this tied the Chiefs and Cowboys for the highest scoring game this week. All right, moving on. We have the Miami Dolphins winning at home against the New Orleans Saints, 21-17. Don't look now, but the Dolphins have won 3 straight. They are now all of a sudden 5-7. Meanwhile, the Saints have been eliminated from the playoffs with a record of 2-10. We'll begin with individual numbers first up for the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa really didn't have that good of a game. 12 of 23 for 157 with no touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 55.9 QB rating. And also ran the ball 4 times for just 4 yards. But Devin Achane, he had no problem running the ball. 22 carries for 134 and a touchdown, averaging 6.1 per run. Leading receivers include Darren Waller, 2 catches, 47 yards on 3 targets. He averaged 23.5 per catch. Jalen Waddle, 3 for 40 on 6 targets. That's a 13.3 average. Malik Washington, 4 for 30 yards on 5 targets. He averaged 7.5. And Greg Dulcich, 2 for 24 yards on 2 targets and a 12 average. I can never pin his last name. It looks easy to pronounce, but it really isn't. Anyway, Riley Patterson was 4 for 4 on field goals, long of 48. 1 for 1 on extra points. Jake Bailey, 4 punts, averaging 50.3. Long punt of 54 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Dolphins include Jordan Brooks. No surprise here, he had 12 tackles. Tyrell Dodson had 8 tackles and a pass defense. Minka Fitzpatrick was all over the field for this Dolphins D. He had 7 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Afidu Melifonwu also had 7 tackles. You had 6 tackles for Ashton Davis. 6 tackles as well for Rasul Douglas, plus a pass defense and an interception. Jack Jones had 5 tackles, and Chop Robinson had 5 tackles plus 1.5 sacks. Bradley Chubb also recorded a sack in this game. For the Saints, Tyler Shuck, 26 of 38, 239, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 91.9 QB rating. Leading rusher is Devin Neal. He is a rookie, I think. Yep, rookie out of Kansas. He had 14 carries, 47 yards, and a 3.4 average. Wrong name. On the receiving end, you have Devon Vele, 8 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Chris Olave, 4 for 47 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Jawan Johnson, 5 catches, 39 yards on 9 targets. That's a 7.8 average. We mentioned Devin Neal already. He also added 3 catches for 22 yards and a 7.3 receiving average. Mason Tipton, 3 for 20 yards on 4 targets, 6.7 average. And here's a name you haven't heard in a while, Foster Moreau. 2 catches, 13 yards on 2 targets. He averaged 6.5. Charlie Smythe, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 56 with no extra points. Kai Kroger, 6 punts, averaging 48.8, long punt of 60 with 1 touchback and 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for New Orleans include Demario Davis, he had 9 tackles. Terrell Burgess had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Pete Werner and Devin Godshaw each had 4 tackles. Cam Jordan also had 4 tackles plus 2 sacks. And Brian Breezy had 4 tackles plus a sack. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Total yards, 298 for the Dolphins, 294 for the Saints, so both were under 300. Passing yards favored New Orleans, 213 to 134. Rush yards favored Miami, 164 to 81. That's a little more than a 2-to-1 edge. First downs, 20 for the Saints, 16 for the Dolphins. Both teams were 4 for 12 on 3rd down and 0 for 1 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 45 yards for the Saints, 4 sacks taken for 26, with 1 lost fumble and 1 interception thrown. 3 penalties, 15 yards for the Dolphins, 4 sacks taken for 23, with no lost fumbles and 1 interception thrown. And time of possession was as close as it could possibly get. 30 minutes, 8 seconds for the Dolphins, 29 minutes, 52 seconds for the Saints. Closing line was Miami -5, and the over-under was 41.5. I took the Dolphins to win and the Saints to cover. Got both picks right. So straight up, my record is 3-7. ATS record is now 5-5 as I even that out. Over-under totals, I projected the game under 41.5 points. There were 38. So now I'm 6-4 on those. As we come to the last early game of the week, the San Francisco 49ers defeating the Cleveland Browns 26-8 as San Francisco moves to 9-4 on the season, and they're very much alive in the NFC West title race. The Browns, meanwhile, not eliminated mathematically, but on the verge, they are 3-9. And a quick note, this is the 49ers' first victory in Cleveland since 1984, ending a 4-game losing streak there. We'll start with individual numbers. First up for the 49ers, Brock Purdy, 16 of 29, 168 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He had an 83.7 QB rating. Christian McCaffrey attempted a pass and had a 39.6 QB rating. Speaking of Christian McCaffrey, he led the team in rushing, 20 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown, just a 2.7 average. Brian Robinson Jr., 8 carries, 26 yards, and a 3.3 average. Okay, we can get out of there now. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy added a rushing touchdown for San Francisco, just 2 carries for 4 yards. On the receiving side, George Kittle, 4 catches, 67 yards, 5 targets, and a 16.8 average. Juwan Jennings, 4 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets, 9.8 per reception. Kyle Juszczyk, 2 catches, 27 yards on 2 targets, 13.5 average. Christian McCaffrey, 4 for 21 on 4 targets, and a 5.3 average. And Ricky Pearsall, 2 catches, 14 yards on 3 targets. That's a 7 average. Matt Gay, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 31, 2 for 2 on extra points. Thomas Morstead, 5 punts, averaging 35.6, long punt of 42 with 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Niners include Clelin Ferrell, 9 tackles and 2 sacks. Malik Mustafa and Upton Stock each had 7 tackles. Mustafa added a pass defense. Jair Brown, 5 tackles. D. Winters, 6 tackles. Curtis Robinson also with 6 tackles. Keon White, 3 solo tackles and a sack. For the Browns, Shedeur Sanders making his first start in Cleveland. Went 16 of 25 for 149 with a touchdown and no interceptions. He had a 93.6 QB rating. So he really couldn't capitalize on that on his first start of the season last week against the Raiders. Dylan Gabriel, 1 for 1 for no yards and a 79.2 QB rating. Quinshon Judkins ran pretty well, 23 carries, 91 yards, and a 4-yard average. Dylan Sampson, rookie from Tennessee, carried the ball 4 times for 23 yards and a 5.8 average. Leading receivers for the Browns include Harold Fanning Jr., 3 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. That's a 14.3 average. Jerry Jeudy, 3 for 26 on 4 targets, 8.7 average. Here's a name I don't think I've ever said. Gage Laveridin. This is a rookie receiver from South Carolina. He's listed as a punt returner for the Browns. He had 2 catches, 23 yards on 3 targets, averaging 11.5. Quinshon Judkins added 3 catches, 18 yards on 3 targets, and a 6 average, so that's a 100-yard game for him. And Jerome Ford, 3 receptions, 17 yards on 3 targets, that's a 5.7 average. All right. There were no field goals or extra points by the Browns. Corey Bojorquez was kind of busy. 4 punts averaging 44.5. Long punt of 49 with 1 touchback. Okay, leading receivers for the Browns include another rookie, UCLA's Carson Schlesinger. He had 10 tackles. Ronnie Hickman had 8 tackles. Tyson Campbell had 6 tackles. Hickman had a pass defense, while Campbell had 2 passes defensed. Meanwhile, Shelby Harris and Mason Graham each had 4 tackles, I think. Yep. Myles Garrett, 5 tackles and a sack. I think he's got 19 on the season now. Yes, 19 sacks and 49 tackles. So he is well on his way to breaking the all-time sack record, currently shared with Michael Strahan from 2003 and TJ Watt from 2023, which is 22.5. He is well on his way there. Grant Delpit with 5 tackles and Devin Bush with 7 tackles. Total yards, 253 for the Browns, 252 for the Niners, so almost evenly split. Passing yards favored San Francisco, 161 to 115. Rush yards favored Cleveland, 138 to 91. 19 first downs for the Niners, 15 for the Browns. San Francisco solid on 3rd down. They went 11 of 17 with no 4th downs. Cleveland, meanwhile, 3 of 11 on 3rd down and 0 for 4 on 4th down. That's just pitiful. 3 penalties, 11 yards for the Niners, 1 sack taken for 7, with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 4 penalties, 25 yards for the Browns, 3 sacks taken for 34, with 2 lost fumbles and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession was almost even as well. 30 minutes, 10 seconds for the 49ers, 29 minutes, 50 seconds for the Browns. Closing line was San Francisco minus 5.5, and the over-under was 35. I took the Browns to win, but for some strange reason, I picked the Browns to cover the 5 points. But I do win another straight-up game, going to 4-7. ATS record drops to 5-6. Alright, I did the records wrong here. It says I'm 6-5 over under. I'm now 7-4 because I did project the over 36.5. Oh yeah, that is correct. That is correct. I project the game would go over 36.5. There were 34 points. So I narrowly lost this one. So that 6-5 record is correct. Okay, I will be right back and I'll continue the recap with the 4 o'clock games plus Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. So stay with me. I'll be right back. Alrighty. Okay. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. Okay, so those are the early games from Sunday. Now we're going to jump into the late afternoon games. And we'll start off with the Seattle Seahawks shutting out the Minnesota Vikings 26-0. Seattle moves its record to 9-3, and coupled that with the Rams' loss, they are once again tied atop the NFC West. Meanwhile, the Vikings, their downward spiral continues as they drop to 4-8. And fun fact, this snaps a streak of 294 consecutive games going back to 2007, where the Vikings were not shut out. All right, we'll begin with individual numbers. First up for the Seahawks. Not a great day for Sam Darnold. 14-26 for 128 yards with no touchdowns and no interceptions. He had a 67.5 QB rating. Leading rushers include Kenneth Walker III, 13 carries, 56 yards, 4.3 average. And Zach Charbonnet, 14 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown and a 3.7 average. Leading receivers for the Hawks include A.J. Barner, 4 catches, 35 yards on 5 targets, averaging 8.8. Cooper Kupp, just 3 receptions for 24 yards on 4 targets, that's an 8 average. Jackson Smith and Jigba, just 2 catches for 23 yards on 4 targets, that's an 11.5 average. And Kenneth Walker, 3 for 18 on 4 targets, averaging 6. Jason Myers, 4 for 4 on field goals, long of 56, 2 for 2 on extra points. Michael Dixon, 4 punts, averaging 50.8, long punt of 56, 1 touchback, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. All right. My defensive player of the week is Ernest Jones IV. He had 12 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and 2 interceptions, one of which he returned for a touchdown. Devin Witherspoon, 7 tackles. Nick Emanwari, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Drake Thomas, 5 tackles and half a sack. Byron Murphy II, 3 tackles and a sack. And that is basically it, unless you want to add DeMarcus Lawrence in this. 2 solo tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And for the Vikings, no J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. So they ended up with Max Brosmer, rookie from Minnesota. And boy, this was about as rough as an NFL debut gets. 19 of 30 for 126 yards with no touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He had a 32.8 QB rating. Rushing game was pretty non-existent as well. Jordan Mason led the way with 6 carries, 47 yards, and a 7.8 average. And Xavier Smith with 3 carries, 17 yards, and a 5.7 average. Leading receivers for the Vikings include T.J. Hawkinson, 6 catches, 59 yards on 6 targets, averaging 9.8. Sorry. Jordan Addison, 5 for 36 on 10 targets and a 7.2 average. Aaron Jones, 4 for 22 on 4 targets and a 5.5 average. And Justin Jefferson, a non-factor in this one. 2 catches, 4 yards on 6 targets, averaging just 2 yards a catch. All right, no field goals or extra points for the Vikings. Ryan Wright had 5 punts, averaging 50.4, long punt of 60 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Vikings include Eric Wilson with 11 tackles and a sack. Blake Cashman had 9 tackles and a pass defense. Isaiah Rodgers with 5 tackles. Dallas Turner, in his second year from Alabama, had 5 tackles, 2 passes defense, or rather 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 pass defense. Andrew Van Ginkel had 5 tackles and a sack. Byron Murphy Jr. and Harrison Smith each had 5 tackles. Harrison Smith also added a pass defense. And Joshua Metellus with 4 tackles and 2 passes defense. No offense to speak of from either team in this game. 219 yards for the Seahawks, 162 for the Vikings. Passing yards favored Minnesota slightly, 96 to 94. Rush yards favored Seattle, 125 to 66. 17 first downs for the Seahawks, 11 for the Vikings. Minnesota was 2 for 10 on 3rd down, 0 for 2 on 4th down. Seattle was 6 of 15 on 3rd down and 1 for 1 on 4th down. 10 penalties, 80 yards for the Vikings, 4 sacks taken for 30, with 1 lost fumble and those 4 interceptions thrown. 4 penalties, 25 yards for the Seahawks, 4 sacks taken for 34 yards, with 2 lost fumbles and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession, 34 minutes, 21 seconds for the Seahawks, 25 minutes, 39 seconds for the Minnesota Vikings. Closing line was Seattle minus 12 and the over-under is 41.5. This was my lock of the week as I took the Seahawks to win, the Seahawks to cover. So my straight up record is now 5-7. ATS record is back even again at 6-6. Over under total is also 6-6. I projected this game to go over 41 points. I was not expecting Brosmer to start at quarterback. So I ended up losing this one as the two teams combined to score 26 points, all by the Seahawks. So my over-under total record is 6-6. Okay, our next game up, you have the Buffalo Bills defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers 26-7. The Bills improved to 8-4 on the season, but they're still a ways back in the AFC East. The Steelers remain in a tie atop the AFC North with the Ravens as they fall to 6-6. We'll start with individual numbers. First up for the Bills, Josh Allen really didn't have to throw that much. 15-23 for 123 with a touchdown and an interception, only a 75.1 QB rating. But he did run the ball a bit, 8 carries, 38 yards, and a rushing touchdown, averaging 4.8 per run. James Cook, monster game, 32 for 144 and a 4.5 average. He also led the team in receiving with 3 catches, 33 yards on 3 targets, and an average of 11. So he's going to be my offensive player of the week with 35 touches and 177 yards. The other rusher to talk about for Buffalo is Ray Davis. He had 9 carries, 62 yards, and a 6.9 average. As for other receivers, Dawson Knox, 3 for 28 yards on 4 targets, 9.3 average. Ty Johnson, 3 catches, 20 yards on 5 targets, averaging 6.7. And Keon Coleman, 2 catches for only 9 yards on 3 targets, but he did score a touchdown. Matt Prater, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 37, and 2 for 3 on extra points. Mitch Wisnowski, 2 punts, averaging 49.5, long punt of 52, with 1 touchback. All right, not too much to talk about here with the tacklers. Shaq Thompson led Buffalo with 9 tackles. Jordan Poyer had 6 tackles. Matt Milano, 3 tackles. Cole Bishop, 4 tackles. Christian Benford, 2 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. And Joey Bosa, 2 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. For the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, 10 of 21 for 117 yards. With no touchdowns or interceptions, he finished with a 65 QB rating. Mason Rudolph came in briefly, went 0 for 3 with an interception, and had no passer rating. Okay, your leading rusher was Jaylen Warren, 10 carries, 35 yards, and a touchdown, just a 3.5 average. Kenneth Gainwell, 5 carries, 20 yards, averaging 4. As for your receivers, Darnell Washington had 2 catches, 45 yards on 4 targets, averaging 22.5. DK Metcalf, 3 for 32 yards on 5 targets, 10.7 average. Kenneth Gainwell, 2 for 25 yards on 3 targets, 12.5 average. And Jaylen Warren, 2 catches, 9 yards on 4 targets, averaging 4.5. No field goals for Chris Boswell, and 1 for 1 on extra points. So a pretty light day for him. Corliss Waitman, 4 punts, averaging 40.3. Long punt of 51 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Okay. Peyton Wilson led the way for the Steelers defense. He had 14 tackles. Jalen Ramsey had 9 tackles. Malik Harrison, 8 tackles. Same for Joey Porter Jr. Cam Hayward also had 8 tackles. Yaya Black, 9 tackles and a forced fumble. Alex Highsmith, back from injury, had 6 tackles. Patrick Queen, who got injured in this game, also had 6 tackles. Nick Herbig, 3 tackles and a forced fumble. And Kyle Duggar, 6 tackles and a pass defensed. Total yards, 372 for the Bills, 166 for the Steelers. Passing yards favored Buffalo, 123-108. Rush yards favored Buffalo as well, 249-58. 26 first downs for the Bills, 10 for the Steelers. Buffalo 8 of 15 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth down. And Pittsburgh finished 3 for 9 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down. 7 penalties, 45 yards for the Bills, no sacks taken. 5 penalties, 67 yards for the Steelers, and 1 sack taken for 9 yards. Each team lost a fumble, and each team threw an interception. Well into ball hawk territory are the Buffalo Bills at 41 minutes, 59 seconds. And the Steelers only had the ball for 18 minutes and 1 second. Nearly 3-1 in time of possession there. Closing line was Buffalo -3, over-under is 44. I took the Bills to win and cover. And I took the under 47 in this game as there were only 33 points. So I won all 3 of these picks. Straight up record is now 6-7. ATS spreads and over-under totals are both 7 and 6 after this one. As we come to the last Sunday afternoon game on the schedule, the Los Angeles Chargers defeat the hapless Las Vegas Raiders 31-14 as LA improves its record to 8-4. The Raiders dropped to 2-10 and they are officially out of the playoffs. We'll start with individual numbers, starting off with the Chargers. Justin Herbert, there's some news on him. I'll tell you about that in a second. 15 of 20 for 151 yards with 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 108.5 QB rating, plus 3 carries for 8 yards, averaging 2.7 per run. Now here's the deal. Justin Herbert underwent surgery on his left hand, and it will come down to pain tolerance for Justin Herbert as the Chargers prepare for next week's matchup with the Eagles. Earlier in the week, Herbert said that he was treating it as if I'm playing on Monday. He did end up breaking a bone in that left hand, so we'll see if he plays Monday or not. Trey Lance was 1 for 1 for 9 yards and a 104.2 QB rating. Alright, leading rushers for the Chargers include Kamani Vidal, 25 carries, 126, and a touchdown, averaging 5 per run. Those are workhorse type numbers. And Jarrett Patterson, 11 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 4.9. Vidal, if I didn't mention, he scored a touchdown as well. Leading receivers for the Chargers include Ladd McConkey, 4 catches, 39 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets, 9.8 average. Keenan Allen, 4 catches, 30 yards on 5 targets, averaging 7.5. Trey Harris, 3 catches, 30 yards on 4 targets, averaging 10. Oronde Gadsden, 1 for 27 on 2 targets. And Quentin Johnston, 3 catches, 23 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets, averaging 7.7. Kamani Vidal added a catch for 11 yards on his only target. Cameron Dicker, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 56, 4 for 4 on extra points. J.K. Scott, 2 punts, averaging 57.5, long punt of 58, with 1 touchback. Okay. Leading tacklers for the Chargers, you've got Denzel Perryman with 7 tackles. Tuli Tuipulotu with 7 tackles as well, plus 2 sacks and a pass defense. Elijah Moden with 5 tackles. Khalil Mack, 4 tackles, half a sack, and a forced fumble. Deion Henley, 3 tackles and half a sack. Tony Jefferson had 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Derwin James with 2 tackles plus half a sack. And Deshaun Hand with 1 tackle and half a sack. Okay. Total yards, 341 for the Chargers, 156 for the Raiders. Passing yards favored LA, 149 to 125. Rush yards favored LA at more than a 6-1 clip at 192 to 31. 22 first downs for the Chargers, 12 for the Raiders. Vegas was 2 of 8 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. Chargers 12 for 17 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down. 4 penalties, 50 yards for the Raiders, 5 sacks taken for 40, with no lost fumbles and 1 interception thrown. 4 penalties, 27 yards for the Chargers. 3 sacks taken for 11 yards, no lost fumbles, and also an interception thrown. Ball hawk territory for the Los Angeles Chargers. They held the ball for 35 minutes, 48 seconds, while the Raiders had it for 24 minutes and 12 seconds. Closing line is LA minus 10, and the over-under is 40.5. I took the Chargers to win and cover. So my straight-up record evens up finally at 7-7. ATS record goes to 8-6. Over-under totals also 8-6, as I projected this game to go over 40.5. We had 45 points in this one. Alright, moving on to Sunday Night Football. And it was a thriller in our nation's capital as the Denver Broncos defeated the Washington Commanders in overtime, 27-26. To win their 9th straight game and go to 10-2 on the season. The Commanders, meanwhile, have dropped 7 in a row, and they fall to 3-9, and they are very, very close to being knocked out of playoff contention. We'll begin with individual numbers, starting off with the Broncos. Bo Nix, 29 of 45, 321 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had an 83.7 QB rating. Plus 2 carries for 16 yards and an 8 average. All right. RJ Harvey, 13 carries, 35 yards, and 2 touchdowns, averaging 2.7 per run. And Jace McLaughlin, 6 carries, Jaleel McLaughlin, I should say. 6 carries, 24 yards, averaging 4 per play. 4 per rush. All right, on the receiving side for the Broncos, they are led by Evan Ingram. 6 catches, 79 yards on 9 targets, 13.2 average. Cortland Sutton, 5 for 62 on a touchdown on 6 targets, 12.4 average. Andy Troutman, 3 for 47. I said Andy Troutman, I meant Adam Troutman. Sorry about that. 3 catches, 47 yards on 4 targets. P.J. Bryant, 3 catches, 42 yards on 7 targets. He averaged 4 per catch. And apologies again, I said P.J. Bryant when it's really Pat Bryant. Troy Franklin, 2 for 21 on 3 targets, 10.5 average. Tyler Batty, 3 for 18 yards on 5 targets and a 6 average. And Marvin Mims Jr., 2 for 8 on 2 targets. He averaged 4 per catch. Will Lutz, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 33, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Jeremy Crawshaw, 4 punts averaging 45.3, long punt of 50, with 1 touchback and 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Broncos include Talanoa Hufanga, 13 tackles and a pass defense. My computer is slow. Sorry about this. Guys. Brandon Jones, 8 tackles. Jonathan Cooper had 6 tackles. Shaquan McMillan had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Alex Singleton, back from injury, good to see him again. 6 tackles and 2 passes defense. Pat Surtain, also back from injury. 4 solo tackles and a pass defense. Riley Moss with 4 tackles and 2 passes defense. Malcolm Roach had 5 tackles. Dre Greenlaw had 5 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Nick Bonito, 3 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And DeAndre Tillman, 4 tackles and a sack. For the Commanders, Marcus Mariota, 28 of 50 for 294 with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 78.3 QB rating. He also led the team with 10 carries, 55 yards, and a 5.5 average. Chris Rodriguez Jr., 11 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown, 3.7 average. Jeremy McNichols, 6 carries, 30 yards, and a 5 average. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, 4 carries, 20 yards, and also a 5 average. Leading receivers include Zach Ertz, 10 for 106 on 13 targets, 10.6 average. Terry McLaurin, who's also back from injury, had 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown on 14 targets, and a 13.7 average. Deebo Samuel, 5 for 64 on 7 targets, 12.8 average. And then Treylon Burks, the one-time Tennessee Titan, had 1 catch on 4 targets for 5 yards, and it goes for a touchdown. Jake Moody, the new kicker for the Commanders, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 38, 2 for 2 on extra points. Tress Way, 4 punts averaging 42.3, long punt of 56, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Alright. Leading tacklers for the Commanders, you have Bobby Wagner with 8 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Mikey Senristil had 7 tackles. Will Harris, 6 tackles. I talked about Bobby Wagner. Jeremy Reeves had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Noah Igbinoghene. I'm not pronouncing his last name. He had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Quay Martin, 7 tackles. Or rather, Quan Martin with 7 tackles. Jordan McGee had 6 tackles. So yeah, there's a lot of them here. Frankie Louvu had 4 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Total yards, 419 for the Commanders, 402 for the Broncos. Passing yards favored Denver, 315 to 276. Rush yards favored Washington, 143 to 87. How about 30 first downs for the Washington Commanders versus 23 for the Broncos. And both teams did well on late downs in this one. Denver was 7 of 15 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down, while Washington was 8 for 17 on third down and 3 for 3 on fourth down. 5 penalties, 33 yards for the Broncos, 1 sack taken for 6, no lost fumbles, and 1 interception thrown. 5 penalties, 35 yards for the Commanders, 2 sacks taken for 18, with no lost fumbles and 1 interception thrown. Time of possession, exactly 35 minutes for the Washington Commanders, putting them in ball hawk territory. The Broncos had the ball for 32 minutes and 13 seconds. Closing line was Denver -6. The over-under was 43.5. As you saw in my picks video on Thursday, I picked Denver to win and Washington to cover. And I got both right. So I go to 8-7 straight up and 9-6 ATS. I did project that this game, I originally predicted that this game would go over 44, but with the amended score, I took the under instead, and that cost me. So I'm 8-7 in over-under totals as we come to the final game of the week, and that's Monday Night Football. As the red-hot New England Patriots win their 10th game in a row, beating down the New York Giants 33-15. The Patriots go to 11-2 heading into their bye week with the best record in the AFC and the best record in the NFL. The Giants, meanwhile, fall to 2-10, and they are out. And they are still out of playoff contention. In fact, they were eliminated last week. We'll start with individual numbers. First, for the Patriots, what a night for Drake May. 24-31, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a 126 QB rating. He also added 6 runs for 12 yards. Speaking of runs, Travion Henderson led the way with 11 carries, 67 yards, and a 6.1 average. And Ramondre Stevenson, not too shabby himself, 12 for 40 yards and a 3.3 average. Leading receivers for the Patriots include Hunter Henry, 4 catches, 73 yards on 6 targets, 18.3 average. The aforementioned Ramondre Stevenson, 3 catches, 40 yards on 3 targets, 13.3 average. Keyshawn Moody, 4 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. That's an 8.8 average. Demario Douglas, 3 for 33 on 3 targets, 11 average. I'll read them all here. Kyle Williams had just 1 catch on 1 target for 33 yards, and that was a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 3 for 26 on 4 targets at 8.7 per catch. Matt Collins, 3 for 23 on 4 targets, 7.7 per catch. Travion Henderson, 3 for 19 yards on 4 targets and a 6.3 average per catch. Andy Borregales, 4 for 5 on field goals, long of 30, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Bryce Behringer, 2 punts, averaging just 27, long punt of 32, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Patriots include Christian Ellis, led the team with 10 tackles. Craig Woodson had 6 tackles. Carlton Davis had 5 tackles and 2 passes defensed. Christian Barmore had 5 tackles. Harold Landry had 5 tackles plus a sack. Clavon Chiasson had 4 tackles. And Gonzo, aka Christian Gonzalez, had 3 solo tackles and a pass defense. And for the Giants, Jackson Dart is back from injury. He went 17 of 24 for 139 with a touchdown and no interceptions, 99.1 QB rating. All right. Leading rushers for the Giants include Devin Singletary, 12 for 68 and a touchdown, 5.7 average. Tyrone Tracy, 10 carries, 36 yards, and a 3.6 average. He did get injured in this game, I think, but they don't mention it here. He did get hurt. Jackson Dart, 4 carries, 20 yards, averaging 5 per run. Leading receivers, Darius Slayton, 2 for 41 and a touchdown on 3 targets, 20.5 average. Wan'Dale Robinson, 7 for 34 yards, 8 targets, 4.9 average. Devin Singletary, 3 for 34 on 3 targets and an 11.3 average. So he had a 102-yard night for the Giants. Theo Johnson, 3 catches, 29 yards on 8 targets, averaging 9.7. Younghoe Koo, no field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points, but everyone's talking about Younghoe Koo not kicking the ball on a field goal attempt. That was pretty embarrassing to watch, to say the least. Jamie Gillen, 4 punts, averaging 49.8, long punt of 54. All right, leading tacklers for the Giants include, if my computer will cooperate with me. Come on. Thank you. Zion Barnes led the team with 13 tackles. Paulson Adebo had 10 tackles and a pass defense. Dane Belton had 8 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. 7 tackles for Bobby Okereke. 6 tackles each for Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin. Cordell Flott, 5 tackles. And Abdul Carter, 4 tackles and a sack. Okay, total yards, 395 for the Patriots, 239 for the Giants. Passing yards favorite New England more than 2-1, 276 to 128. Patriots also had the edge on the ground, 119 rush yards to 111. 21 first downs for the Patriots, 14 for the Giants. Third downs, 4-11 for the Giants and 0 for 3 on fourth down. 6 of 13 for the Patriots, 1 for 1 on fourth down. 4 penalties, 30 yards for the Giants, 2 sacks taken for 11 yards, 1 lost fumble, and no interceptions thrown. 3 penalties, 30 yards for the Patriots, 3 sacks taken for 6 yards, no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. Time of possession is 33 minutes, 26 seconds for the Patriots, 26 minutes, 34 seconds for the Giants. Closing line was New England -7, over-under is 46.5. I picked the Patriots to win, and I took the Giants to cover. And I projected this game would go under 45.5 points. This game went slightly over at 48. So, for the week, my straight-up record is 9-7. My spread record is also 9-7. I will definitely take that. And over-under totals, I split the 16 games going 8-8. So considering how bad this week started from a pick standpoint, it was a pretty good week. Through 13 weeks, my straight-up record is now 125-68-1. My win percentage drops to 647. My spread record for the year is 91-99-4, which is a 479 win percentage. Let me get that off of there. And on over-under totals, I am now 190 with 4 pushes, which is a 526 win percentage. All right, that's the recap. Now let's move on to my Week 14 power rankings. And we have a new team in the outhouse this week. The Las Vegas Raiders are down to number 32 with a record of 2-10. They got a tough divisional matchup with the division-leading Broncos on Sunday. And then moving up to number 31 are the Tennessee Titans, although they have the NFL's worst record at 1-11. They play the Browns and Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland on Sunday. Dropping to number 30 are the New York Football Giants at 2-11. They are off this week. Dropping to 29, the New Orleans Saints for the record of 2-10. They play the Bucs in Tampa Bay this week. The Cleveland Browns took a drop to number 28. They're 3-9. They'll host the Titans. The New York Jets, also 3-9, move up to number 27. They'll host the Dolphins. Despite losing, the Arizona Cardinals moved up to number 26 with a record of 3-9. They'll host the Rams, which won't be easy. And then we'll get these next two out of the way. The Washington Commanders moved up despite losing to number 25 with a record of 3-9. And the Minnesota Vikings also moved up despite losing at 4-8. They're at number 24. These two teams play in Minneapolis on Sunday. The Atlanta Falcons at 4-8 slipped to number 23 as they prepare to host the Seahawks. The Cincinnati Bengals, with that big win on Thanksgiving night, go to 4-8 and visit Josh Allen and the Bills this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers slipped to number 21 with a record of 6-6 as they prepare for a first-place battle with the Ravens. The Carolina Panthers at 7-6 moved up after their upset victory over the Rams. They are off this week. They got the Miami Dolphins holding steady at 19 with a record of 5-7. They'll face the Jets in New York this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars also hanging tough at number 18 with a record of 8-4. They'll host the Colts. And that's for first place in the AFC South. The Kansas City Chiefs are down to number 17 with a record of 6-6. They'll host the Texans on Sunday night. Then at number 16, you've got the Los Angeles Chargers with a record of 8-4 as they prepare to host the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Moving up to number 15 are the Dallas Cowboys at 6-5-1 as they prepare to face the Lions in Detroit on Thursday night. The Indianapolis Colts slipped to number 14 with a record of 8-4. They'll play the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Hopefully they can end that long losing streak down there. Number 13 are the San Francisco 49ers with a record of 9-4. They are off this week. Then you got the Baltimore Ravens with a record of 6-6, dropping to number 12 as they prepare to host the Pittsburgh Steelers in a battle for first place in the AFC North. The Philadelphia Eagles fall out the top 10. They drop to number 11 with a record of 8-4 as they face the Chargers Monday night in LA. The Detroit Lions also taking a drop down to number 10 with a record of 7-5. They'll host the Cowboys on Thursday and basically is a must-win game for them. It's a must-win game for both, to be honest. The Houston Texans inch up to number 9 with a record of 7-5 as they prepare to play the Kansas City Chiefs in a similar game on Sunday night. The Chicago Bears motor into the top 10 at number 8 with a record of 9-3. They'll face the arch rival Packers coming up. Then it's the Then it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 7 with a record of 7-5 as they'll host the Saints. The aforementioned Green Bay Packers at 8-3-1 jump to number 6. They'll host the Bears this week. Dropping the number 5 are the Los Angeles Rams with a record of 9-3. They visit the Cardinals here in Arizona. Holding steady at number 4, the Buffalo Bills at 8-4 as they'll host the Cincinnati Bengals. The Seattle Seahawks move up to number 3 with a record of 9-3. They visit Atlanta. The Denver Broncos stay at number 2 with a record of 10-2 as they visit the Raiders in Vegas. And number 1 for I think the 4th week in a row are the New England Patriots at 11-2 going into their bye week. All right. So those are my power rankings. We have one more order of business to go through before we wrap things up, and that is the current playoff races in the NFL, and we'll start, as always, in the AFC. Okay, your 4 division leaders entering Week 14 are the New England Patriots in the East, the Denver Broncos in the West, the Jacksonville Jaguars in the South, and the Baltimore Ravens in the North. So we'll start with those 4 teams. All right, the New England Patriots have a record of 11-2, which is the best in the NFL. They are 3-0 versus the East and 6-2 versus the AFC. They have a 342 strength of schedule and 343 strength of victory. Taking the number 2 seed right now are the Denver Broncos at 10-2. 2-1 record versus the West, 6-2 in the AFC. 403 strength of schedule, 351 strength of victory. Taking the number 3 spot are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 8-4. 2-1 record versus the South, 5-2 in the AFC. 493 strength of schedule, 439 strength of victory. Jacksonville wins the tiebreaker over Indianapolis, who they play this week, based on best win percentage in common games. So that puts the Jags 3rd. Then it's the Baltimore Ravens in the 4 spot at 6-6. 2-1 record versus the North, 4-4 in the AFC. 472 strength of schedule, 375 strength of victory. Baltimore wins the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh based on best win percentage in common games. Your 3 wildcard teams would be the Los Angeles Chargers, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Buffalo Bills. We'll start off at the number 5 seed, currently occupied by the Chargers at 8-4. 4-0 record versus the West, 7-2 in the AFC. 393 strength of schedule, 375 strength of victory. And I'll read the tiebreakers as we go. LA wins the tiebreaker over both Buffalo and Indianapolis based on best win percentage in conference games. So they have a 7-2 record. And we'll talk about the other 2 right now. The Indianapolis Colts are presently the number 6 seed, also with a record of 8-4. 2-1 versus the South, 6-3 in the AFC. 431 strength of schedule, 354 strength of victory. Indy also has the tiebreaker over Buffalo based on best win percentage in conference games. This drops the Buffalo Bills into the number 7 spot with a record of 8-4. 2-2 record versus the East, 5-3 in the AFC. 473 strength of schedule, 433 strength of victory. So, as of right now, the Bills would play the Broncos in the wild card round. The Colts would get the Jaguars, and the Chargers would play the Ravens, with the Patriots having the first round bye. Outside of the playoffs at number 8 and also alive in the AFC South race are the Houston Texans at 7-5. 4-1 record versus the South, 6-2 in the AFC. 579 strength of schedule, 482 strength of victory. Next, we have a tie with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll start off with the Steelers at 6-6, 2-1 versus the North, 5-3 in the AFC. 548 strength of schedule, 452 strength of victory. Pittsburgh owns the tiebreaker over Kansas City based on best win percentage in conference games. So this puts the Steelers at number 9 and the Kansas City Chiefs at number 10, also with a 6-6 record. 1-2 record versus the West, 3-4 in the AFC. 528 strength of schedule, 384 strength of victory. The Miami Dolphins, winners of 3 straight, have climbed to the number 11 spot in the AFC with a record of 5-7. 2-2 record versus the East, 2-6 in the AFC. 486 strength of schedule, 333 strength of victory. At number 12 are the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-8. 3-1 record versus the North, 4-4 in the AFC. 562 strength of schedule, 479 strength of victory. Then there's a tie with the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. We'll start with the Jets at 3-9. 0-3 record versus the East and 2-6 in the AFC. 531 strength of schedule, 306 strength of victory. New York wins the tiebreaker over Cleveland based on head-to-head win percentage. This drops the Browns to 14th, who are also 3-9. 0-4 record in the North, 2-6 in the AFC. 490 strength of schedule, 431 strength of victory. And 2 teams are presently eliminated from playoff contention. At number 15 are the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-10. 0-4 record versus the West, 2-7 in the AFC. 562 strength of schedule, 480 strength of victory. And at the bottom, at number 16, are the Tennessee Titans at 1-11, owners of the worst record in the NFL. 0-5 record in the South, 0-9 in the AFC. 621 strength of schedule, 250 strength of victory. All right, that's the AFC. Now let's jump on over to the NFC. Your division leaders as of right now are the Chicago Bears in the North, the Los Angeles Rams in the West, the Philadelphia Eagles in the East, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the South. Starting at the top with the Chicago Bears, posting a record of 9-3. Just 1-2 against the North, but 6-2 in the NFC. 376 strength of schedule, 344 strength of victory. Chicago owns the tiebreaker over LA based on best win percentage in conference games. So this bumps the Rams down to number 2, also with a 9-3 record. 2-1 record versus the West, 4-3 in the NFC. 551 strength of schedule, 523 strength of victory. Los Angeles wins the tiebreaker over Seattle based on head-to-head win percentage. These 2 teams met just 2 weeks ago and the Rams won. Slipping down to the number 3 spot are the Philadelphia Eagles at 8-4. The defending Super Bowl champions are 2-2 versus the East and 7-3 in the NFC. 531 strength of schedule, 515 strength of victory. And the last of the division leaders sitting in the number 4 spot are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 7-5. 2-0 record versus the South, 5-3 in the AFC. 548 strength of schedule, 435 strength of victory. All right, your 3 wildcard teams going into Week 14 are the Seattle Seahawks, the Green Bay Packers, and the San Francisco 49ers. We'll start with the number 5 seed in the NFC, and that's the Seattle Seahawks at 9-3. 2-2 record versus the West, 5-3 in the NFC. 428 strength of schedule, 343 strength of victory. Sitting in the number 6 spot are the Green Bay Packers at 8-3-1. 3-0 record versus the North, 6-2-1 in the NFC. 414 strength of schedule, 371 strength of victory. And sitting in the last playoff spot are the San Francisco 49ers at 9-4. 4-1 record versus the West, 8-2 in the NFC. 462 strength of schedule, 382 strength of victory. As it sits right now, the 49ers would play the Rams in the wild card round. The Packers would play the Eagles, this time in Philly. And the Seahawks would face the Buccaneers. On the outside of the NFC playoffs looking in, sitting at number 8 are the Detroit Lions at 7-5, and they are free falling at the worst possible time. 1-3 record versus the North, 4-4 in the NFC, 476 strength of schedule, 400 strength of victory. At number 9 is the team the Lions will face this week, and that's the Dallas Cowboys at 6-5-1. 3-1 record versus the East, 3-4-1 in the NFC. 476 strength of schedule, same as the Lions, but a weaker strength of victory at 329. And at number 10, you have the Carolina Panthers with a record of 7-6. 2-1 versus the South, 5-3 in the NFC. 513 strength of schedule, 476 strength of victory. Then we have a tie with the Atlanta Falcons and the Minnesota Vikings. All right, we'll start at number 11 with the Atlanta Falcons with a record of 4-8. 1-3 versus the South, 3-4 in the NFC. 500 strength of schedule, 354 strength of victory. Atlanta wins the tiebreaker over Minnesota based on head-to-head win percentage. This bumps the Vikings down to number 12. They also have a record of 4-8. 2-2 versus the North, 2-5 in the NFC. 566 strength of schedule, 479 strength of victory. All right, we've got a tie with the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington Commanders. And we'll start with number 13, which is the Arizona Cardinals, despite being officially out of playoff contention. They have a 3-9 record, 0-4 versus the West, 3-6 in the NFC. 571 strength of schedule, 419 strength of victory. Arizona wins the tiebreaker over Washington based on best win percentage in conference games. This drops the Commanders down to number 14, who are still mathematically alive at 3-9. 1-1 record versus the East, 1-6 in the NFC. 531 strength of schedule, 324 strength of victory. And then the bottom two teams in the conference are both out of playoff contention officially. Starting off at number 15 with the New Orleans Saints with a record of 2-10. 1-2 record versus the South, 2-7 in the NFC. 561 strength of schedule, 346 strength of victory. And at the bottom of the NFC at number 16 are the New York Football Giants at 2-11. 1-3 versus the East, 1-8 in the NFC. 608 strength of schedule, 667 strength of victory. And there it is, folks, the Week 13 edition of the week that was, as we looked at the player and team statistical numbers from all 16 games from week number 13 in the NFL. We also ran through my Week 14 power rankings and the updated playoff picture in the NFL with 5 weeks left. So thus far, no teams have clinched yet. And it looks like no teams will clinch next week in week 14 either. But we do have 5 eliminated teams. Arizona, New Orleans, and New York in the NFC. Las Vegas and Tennessee in the AFC. All right. The college football playoff rankings were just released about 30 minutes ago, and I will be back tomorrow with a look at those rankings as well as the AP and coaches polls. And we'll also have the college football television schedule for Championship Saturday or Championship weekend, because there are a few conference games that are playing on Friday, but a big chunk of them are on Saturday. But yeah, I will be back tomorrow with that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. This was a long one, but thanks for hanging out with me and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.